also added in the CT4S in the glossary, the current coaching tool that's used, so that it's real explicit what the teacher can do in order to help reach that standard. So those pieces have been added. Old language, some of our indicators in the glossary area, we utilized SIOP and SEI and all this stuff, and we just needed to clean it up and streamline it. So there was work there. It wasn't like, oh, it's done. It was a lot of work, but it wasn't, we didn't have to do a major revamp.
Right.
So we don't have to do like a major revamp of teaching the teachers what the process or what the qualitative piece is. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Probably much more than you needed.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. I'm just putting it back to what the language is in the bill, which clearly says qualitative and quantitative, so that helps. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to the student achievement piece. I will show you 3 different samples that are also in the framework. And it's important to note that the samples that I show you can be utilized for teachers or administrators. So you'll see this one, remember the law says it's 33 to 50% must be based on student performance. So this sample 1 shows you one way that the committee may want to look at it, where teaching and leadership, I'm sorry it went leadership, broke it up. Teaching and leadership might be 50%, that's what we just talked about, the qualitative piece. And then the quantitative piece, 17% may be based, if this was a classroom teacher, on that teacher's classroom work. And then the 33% might be based on either grade level or school level data. So that might be one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is a 50-50 model, where the half of it again would be the teaching and the leadership piece, and then the other half might be based on school level data, grade level data, or classroom level data. And that piece of the puzzle, that pie, could be broken up in different components as well.
Okay, so I'm just thinking in my head, I guess I had my numbers backward, but the classroom level could be 17%, not 33 in the community, a school or grade. I thought it was 17, so I have that backward?
It's really dependent upon how the board would like to go with that. I mean, the advisory committee is going to make recommendations,
okay,
but we're able to cut the puzzle up.
Yep.
Any way that we see fit, as long as we utilize the state required data. So here's another.
Dr. Lugo?
Yeah.
Is this in any way, shape, going to hinder special ed teachers?
Part of our charge is making sure it's fair and equitable. We would work very, very hard that we are holding people appropriately accountable and not hurting people. So part of the model that Dr. Spiller's looking at is a growth model, and looking at making those adjustments. There's a lot of work that's been done by the charter school in order to show that as well.
I guess what I'm looking is, when you say performance, I'm looking at student sheets, sample 3, maybe that's the one you got up there. It's the performance of the teacher, not the grade or the student performance.
No, that would be data performance. So performance of the students. So 33% would be based on student performance. Yet you could cut that 33% how you see fit. So for example, if you have a group, you're concerned with special needs students. Let's say we have some special needs students that don't have state level data. They are the severe and profound classroom. That teacher's performance might be based on her own made assessments, or might be based on one of the routes that the group is looking at is the level 2 SES, where teachers set criteria, it's approved by the principal, it's tracked, and it might be that criteria that's on there.
So in this you have flexibility. I'm worried about one size fits all for, and then we have like special needs students or learning disabled or learning challenged, whatever mechanisms you want to use, where the one size fits all wouldn't hit, and you'd be consequencing somebody for going into that field more or less because they're not performing as other students do, the typicals.
I think the intent of the framework that was presented to us, by allowing us to have Group A teachers and Group B teachers, Group A being those who have state level reportable data, and Group B teachers being those who don't, and giving the districts the flexibility to determine who's Group A and Group B will allow for some of that flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
A couple comments.
Okay.
So the language calls for student academic progress, so I think I like that better than just achievement, because then it's actually measuring the growth, which I think if you also couple that with the Arizona growth model that you referenced, that compares students that started like at the same point across the whole state and measures their growth. So whatever you started at, you're kind of measured against that. So I think it helps clarify some of those challenges. And also, Dr. Lugo, I pulled up the framework online, and I think the intent was that the minimum percent should be at the classroom level 33%, and the other 17% could take into consideration school level data. So I just want to ask you to double check that.
I will double check that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot the last one. Okay, so I thought I was done. So the other piece that the committee needs to look at is summative reporting and figuring out where the levels are for determining highly effective once you have the quantitative and qualitative together, effective, partially effective, and ineffective. Those terms are have been given to us by the Arizona Department of Ed. We may choose to use more or less terms, but when we report out, we need to report out in those categories. Questions?
Yes. I think the piece that you're 50% toward, that's the hard piece, of course. And I guess I wanted to hear, as a board member, what are those challenges to get to 100%? Because I know the legislation required the State Board of Ed to adopt this framework by the end of December. And it was pushed all the way up to April to give districts more time to create a model and hopefully pilot the model this school year. So I'd like to know what the challenges are to get there, what's the timeline, and I guess how are people feeling in general about this?
Yeah. Okay, let's start with the challenges.
Yep.
The challenges are in some ways, it's one of those benefits challenges. The districts are given a lot of leeway, so that's kind of a benefit because we have some autonomy over what we put together. Yet that's a huge challenge because you're kind of out there if our district is significantly showing student academic performance differently than other districts. So we really want to watch what other school districts are doing. Some school districts, I know of one who is only using, I want to say 27% as the plan for student achievement and 5% as the actual achievement. So, different districts are looking at it this way. When you say, what are the feelings out there? When we first looped out, the feelings were, I think there was fear and frustration. And there was actually some people who were saying, yeah, I could still remember this social studies teacher at Creighton School who said, yeah, I want to be recognized for my performance. So there's both sides. On the committee, The feeling there is, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they are worker bees, and they're like, we're going to do this and we're going to do it right. And they're very, very committed. So I don't see them as resistant or not wanting to hold accountability, but there's some fear. So some of the challenges also are, especially with our Group B teachers. So for example, the areas of art, music, PE, where we don't have a test, and we have the beginnings of a scope and sequence, you know, when they're teaching what, but we need measurable objectives in order to be able to say this is one teacher's performance and this is another teacher's performance. Those teachers in particular are really looking for more time on task with their students. If they have students once in a 5-day rotation for a 55-minute or a 50-minute block, they're saying, how, you know, I need to have them more, which is, you know, shows their dedication to the profession. So, and your other question revolved around piloting. Well, one of the great things that I feel like is a strength is because our documents for teachers and principals' behaviors are very much aligned to the framework. We're not out there having to retrain people and say, okay, we need you to do it this way and that way. We're really, really good on the professional development piece and everything's aligned. The piloting that's occurring right now is occurring with Dr. Spiller and doing data verification. She's running numbers and she's running you know, the Ames numbers, the ISTEEP, the quarterlies, and the common formative assessment numbers, and then she's going and looking at them and saying, does this make sense? And actually her plans are, and she was going to include me as well, is to look at that tool and ask the principals, you know, does this data make sense to you?
So the timeline to have something to present to the board is, this is what we have. Like, this is where we're going to go.
Let's go back. Okay. Oops. One more. So if you look at our future dates, so our next meeting is September 27th, and that meeting is completely dedicated to the student academic progress piece. Then, and just having Dr. Spiller share, you know, what